So, I mean, as a relative newcomer to the industry about 13 years ago, I felt that I wanted to learn from peers, and I wanted more sort of knowledge about the industry and how other people did things. So just went along to events, and it sort of grew from there, and was eventually asked to join council, and I saw that as a way of then giving back, passing on my knowledge. I've described them as sort of infrastructure, customer expectations, safety, security. So in terms of that, we're seeing a massive rollout in terms of new infrastructure, particularly around sort of gigabit and fibre broadband. And that's being led by members and demanded by government. But that also goes along with customer expectations. We're seeing a sort of massive growth in how people use their connections, what their expectations are, and has been demonstrated by COVID and this lockdown, the demands that come with that and expectations are just growing almost exponentially. Safety, I think, is the other one. We've obviously government's particularly interested in online harms. So how people use internet and also how people abuse it, those are becoming very sort of strong topics. And sort of related to that again, security. So issues around manufacturers, core networks, how people actually run their networks and where they get those dependencies from. But also security services, so things like the Investigatory Powers Act, and how we balance that between keeping individuals safe and keeping obviously the wider population safe. For me, it's a technology one, and I would say it was the move from dial-up to always connected. I think that just changed and was the catalyst for how people viewed the internet and their broadband. And effectively it moved from being a service, something you just went and bought occasionally, to being a utility. And I think that shift was probably the biggest change. And I know from my own perspective, it changed your fundamental thinking. So the fact that before it had to be a conscious effort, I'll go and check my email, and then you'd go away and do something else. Whereas the ability that, well, I don't have to wait, I can just do something, then your whole pattern of usage sort of gradually changed. And I think, as we move on to how do businesses make use of it, improve productivity, it all relates to that availability and immediacy. That people can now just work, do what they need to do, get hold of information, plan and respond. Maybe it sounds a little flippant, but actually still being here and relevant after 25 years. I think the ability to evolve and adapt to a changing market, we're still valued by our members and respected by government. I think achieving that and maintaining that takes some sort of doing. But more seriously, possibly in the early days, ISPA was pivotal in setting up Internet Watch Foundation, and involved in some of those sort of e-commerce regulations. So I think setting some of the groundwork, both to protect and develop the internet, I think was probably a major achievement. Again, I think it's, as we've sort of already alluded to, there's the continual demand for what customers want in terms of speed, access. So there's a huge engineering challenge at the moment in terms of rolling out gigabit capable and fibre broadband across the whole of the country. there's a desire to do it, there's a willingness to do it, the investment's there, but it's still an enormous challenge. So I think actually achieving that over the next, whether it's 5-10 years, is a significant. But that also goes to then reaching everybody. So I think our challenge and government's challenge is not to leave anyone behind, and to make sure we cover the whole of the country, the whole of the population. And part of that reaching everybody is then things like digital exclusion. So this isn't just about making sure that everyone has a connection, which pretty much everybody does now, but it's actually dealing with those who feel that they don't know how to use a connection, don't have the skills, and in an increasingly digital age are being left behind in terms of their career, their education, and their ability to sort of operate and behave. So I think those go together. We're obviously mainly focused on just getting it out there, but equally we're aware of the challenge to help people use it and to understand it. And for the industry itself, I think is coping with those demands. So I said it's now a utility. That brings pressure. We've all had the calls where something's just blipped for 5 minutes and you've got people on the phone going, what on earth's going on? So that sort of resilience and keeping the network actually running, those are obviously challenges for all our members. And finally, I suppose the other big one I would say is as the infrastructure changes, there is going to be big upheaval when we actually turn off the PSTN and the copper networks and the exchanges. And there's a lot of quirks in there, from fire alarms and CCTV and other things that people rely on. And moving that all over to a digital IP world is a significant challenge for the next 5-10 years. The industry stepped forward. So whether it was making connections available to key workers, whether it was speeding up connectivity to get into the Nightingale hospitals, whether it was making calls available to vulnerable. So I think industries definitely stepped forward in this time, and governments appreciated that. For us, the vision is becoming that trusted utility. Certainly my vision for ISPA is an organisation that works collaboratively with our customers, with government, with regulators to enhance the service that we provide and people's usage of that. I'd like to think that we could become an industry that people respect and value, and that would be a major achievement if we can do that.